Hey, DeRacers. So here we are today talking about breeding and our experience of this. And the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is because in the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've gotten multiple questions on Discord and on Twitter from people that have had a very similar question. And it paints the picture that some people out there might think that there are players in the game that are always breeding winners, and then players that might feel like they only breed losers. And so we have been testing multiple horses between our stables, repeating breeds and trying to look for patterns. We've been trying to understand this a little bit more, and we're trying to get to a point where we can build tools that everybody can use. We are not fully vetted there, but what the idea behind this video is to show you a little bit of a backstory of like our breeding history, the bulk losses, the few victories. And keep in mind, the horses that are good, the ones that finally do breed out, we race them a hell of a lot more than the ones that are bad. So the winners are a lot easier to see than the bad horses out there. So that's what today is about. I want to show you a little bit more of our backstory with this. You might be able to pick up some lessons and tricks from what we've learned and just paint a little bit better of a picture.
Yeah, and I think adding to that too, it's important to note that we know it can take anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months to breed again, right? And if your horses are out of sync, if you're trying to do testing like we tend to do a lot of, our best horses are not always breeding together. But over the course of a couple of years now, we've been able to have some of our best horses breed 6+ times, and we're able to analyze that data and see what's changing. We also breed them with other horses to see if there's better pairings out there or different pairings that result in a higher hit rate in terms of good horses being born. So all of that combined, we're going to show off a tool that we use internally. It's not a public tool. It's not going to be super fancy or anything. You're just going to see a lot of numbers across the page. But we're going to try to show you what it is that we look for when we're analyzing kids from any particular pairing of horses. So let me add this to the screen here real quick. We call this our ancestry tool. It's basically a way to report on kids that are born from a set of parents. And in this case, we can type in any particular ID. In this case, we're looking at Naysayer, which was the first child from Skondert and Burra, our what I would say is two of our best Gen 0 horses. They have bred multiple times, but Naysayer was the first. Now, on the left-hand side, we took some inspiration from a tool that Brad had created. We started labeling full relation children. That's direct siblings between these two parents on the left-hand side. So you'll see that Naysayer, followed by Donde, fourth place, Flash Blinder. Then we've got Looks Like a Champ, Skondura, and then more recently, She's a Ninja and Lucifer, who were born to these same parents. Now, across the top of the page here, you'll see that the parents, Skondert and Burra, these are their race counts. This is something called their overall perf 10. Their overall perf 30 is next to it, followed by your dirt perf, your synth perf, and your turf perf. And I'll say one last thing before I throw it back to you, Vamp. If you guys see it labeled in gold here, that's us indicating that as a combined score for the overall perfs, they have to be 90 or greater. And then for the individual tracks, so let's say we're looking at a dirt track here, it has to be 33 or greater for us to label it gold. And the reason why that's important is we're looking for tracks that are good between parents. And then below, if you see something in green, it means that that child was better than the two parents that are currently in this upper section.
Yep, that's correct. So looking at Skondert, you could see in that H2 column, that was dirt, my 11.23. When we first started playing the game, dirt was the only surface out there, and it sucked. Skondert that's his least favorite track. Then when Synth showed up, I was super excited because he started winning more. And as you can see, he had a 34 perf. And then when Turf showed up, it was like, we're in business. That was his track. So I was very excited when Turf showed up to finally pull him out of the negative. And he has consistently been a profitable horse. So I've always known Skondert for having two major characteristics. He really likes grass. And then the other one is he does not give up. This horse is one of the most consistent horses in the game. He rarely gets tired and slows down. If anything, he always gets a little bit faster and faster. He doesn't do the big showstoppers, but he's consistently good. So Naysayer, when we brought in Naysayer, I was hoping that Naysayer was going to take from Burra's dirt and take from Skondert's turf. But what I felt like he was always Skondert light. He did a lot of similar traits. He had that same kind of energy, but it was never enough. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to make him profitable. Donde Albano, that one was very much looked like Burra. I was hoping that that was going to be a Burra, but again, it was weak. Every single area, I could not get them to go. And this was an area where we were testing 30 runs per track or TD, and it was very expensive. And it was frustrating because we were just burning dirt like it was like our heating source around the house. And so it took a long time. We started to get smarter. We started testing shorter distance with shorter distance horses, mid-range or surface related. And we are now starting to experiment with that. And you'll notice the profitability sucked. They all sucked. The first profitable horse that I ever had was the Seaward, breeding with Hungry Eyes, which was one of my teammates. And Hungry Eyes is one of the best horses in the game. Now, Hungry Eyes is a crazy good pretty much everywhere. And that allowed it to have such a spectacular score on both dirt, synth, and turf. I suspect it was more of a Hungry Eyes genes, definitely not above, but maybe just a few points less, which put it above where Skondert was. Very good horse. And that definitely motivated me now to constantly breed, because you need to find the next Seaward.
Yep. Now I'm gonna point something out here before we move on from the Seaward. If you see here, like the 53.25, that is the dirt perf score for the Seaward. Now, if you've seen previous videos where we've talked about what perf is, that is your scoring for all of the tracks across the entire dirt spectrum. So you've got dirt 2 to dirt 15, and we're combining all of your scores there to give you a 53.25. Now, this horse has run over 21,000 times. Skondert has run over 24,000 times and yet has an 11.23. To put that in perspective, that is literally the Seaward being 5 times better on dirt across the board. 5 times. So when, you say that it probably got the genes from Hungry Eyes, I think you're right there. That it's just unreal. But it's really interesting to look at it and go, but it didn't get a good turf score. Well, it got a good one, but comparative to dirt and synth, it's its worst track, and it's still not better than Skondert was on turf. So it definitely got Hungry Eyes' genes, and it appears to have gotten its preference for dirt and or synth rather than the turf track.
Yep. But then you scroll down a little bit below, and we got Hypnotic there. So Hypnotic was another one, but this was was that Skondert? Who bred with Hungry Eyes on that one?
So that one is Skondert and Hungry Eyes again.
Okay.
And this was the second attempt, and I actually own this horse now. I bought it off of the secondary market, and it's just another example of who knows.
I know. Actually, I take that back. That was not a Skondert one. This was the one where Na and I were going to breed the two, and someone picked up Hungry Eyes from me at the last second and bought the breeding. So that one.
No, this one we can actually confirm here. This is the half from the sire, and the sire is in fact Skondert. So we know that Hungry Eyes is the mate, and Skondert had another kid. But yes, you guys were going to do it a third time, and it ended up not happening. But this is, and the reason why I bought it was because it was essentially the Seaward light. It's good on a bunch of tracks, but it's not quite as good.
You're actually right. I forgot about that one. I confirmed that. Yep, that was a Skondert one. I thought that was different. But you're okay. So that just shows you though how the range between these horses, it was still good, but it's not as good. You're right. And so even when you take a pairing that you think is going to be a massive success, it could still come out short. We have yet to see a horse bred with Hungry Eyes beat Hungry Eyes. And even with the one that I have right now, Dr. My Eyes, I was hoping that picking that one up, I would be able to beat Hungry Eyes. I feel like if you can get the genes to be higher than Hungry Eyes going into a Gen 1, you are positioned crazy good for the Gen 2s.
Yeah, 100%. And this is kind of what we're trying to talk about with this video. the pairings themselves, some of them appear to just be astronomically good. And then you can do it again and they're okay. They're not great.
Mhm.
They're not, they might have a few good tracks. And for some people, that's fantastic, right? I was breeding donkeys left and right. So I went and picked up Hypnotic on the secondary market after it had already run multiple times. And I was like, yeah, I now have this incredible horse bred from two good parents. And it's still considered to be worse than the one you've got, which is
Mhm.
just okay. But I'm setting myself up going, hey, now I've got some decent genes in the pool so that when we can breed Gen 1s, I've got something that's actually decent from a good set of parents. Hopefully that gets passed down to Gen 2s.
Yep. Now, I mean, obviously, we don't know what we're talking about. We've been experimenting with this. We're testing with this one. The only things that I feel that is known is that it's a quantity game, and it's, I think, a discovery game where
Yep.
if you breed and breed and breed, the goal is to get lucky and to get the best genes possible to position yourself for the next chain of lineage. But the
Yep.
second part of this one is don't bury yourself in dirt debt trying to figure out if you have a good horse or not. Like we have other videos where we talk about like our preferred methods. I still like the fives test. I know you do your own version of that as well. But I I get to a point now where I will run a horse, and if I'm not overwhelmingly confident that it's great, I end up benching it and I use it strategically for other competitions as more of like a blocker or a participant. But
Yep.
unless I feel confident that the genes are evolving favorably, I usually just don't run them very much.
Yeah, that to that point, you can actually see like early on, we were spending a lot of dirt to figure out these horses weren't good. Now, granted, there were fewer horses on the tracks as well, so
Mhm.
it was a combination of us just wanting to run and have fun and see what they could do. Also paired with the fact that we were running 30 plus times on every track, even when they were bad horses. We've since learned that that is absolutely not necessary, and we have past videos, like you said, but also some future videos that are about to be coming out that we're going to look at why we now know that you can study only a few tracks and know exactly how good that horse is going to be. There's a lot of data that shows even if you don't, you might have an incredible track, right? This horse or any of these horses in this list here might have one or two good tracks. We're not saying that every horse can run somewhere, but the question is, are they going to be good on 5 or 10
Yes.
15 tracks? That's when you know you've got a champ, and that's the line you want to continue to breed with.
Yep. And now on that note, that's a really good point. I have a little bit of just the pessimistic view on some of these ones because I invested so much running 30 everywhere, and like having 469 in the hole with Naysayer, to me, it's not worth recovering that. Now, Naysayer does have a few tracks that he's decent at. So like if you were to be picking up Gen 1 horses that have ran, excuse me, that are negative, you might get lucky and find the one or two tracks that that horse can actually yield.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now,
excuse me.
while Vamp's over here dying, I'm gonna point something out that is exactly to that point. There's a horse down here about midway through the pairings that we had with Scondert and Burra called Looks Like a Champ. Now, Looks Like a Champ out the gate was one of these horses where I was like, oh, this is looking good. This is the first time that I felt like we actually had a good pairing from those two parents. And ultimately, that became not the case. You can see that the score for the overall 10, not great, not even close to the 90 you need to be a gold track here. The overall 30 gets even worse. So the more I ran, the worse my score went down, which can happen when you've got some bloated scores with only 10 plus runs. But the synth and turf tracks were decent, just below the threshold. Now you'll see that I'm actually profitable here, but I know for a fact this is because I found like two tracks that it can run all day, and I'll just run it on those, and it's making me a couple dirk a day, and I end the month maybe plus 25, something like that. And it's like, yeah, over 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, like I'm gonna move it into the green. This would have been red if I had just shut it off. So to your point, you can run these things and make a few bucks, but they're not going to make a ton of money for you. And
Mhm.
to that point, you've got the one below it, Scandura, which you've run almost 5,000 times, and it's made 20 dirt. And so it's
Yeah.
just like, woohoo! You know, there's things out there where it can be a decent horse on a couple tracks, and you still might not necessarily want to run it.
Totally. Now, the last thing to say, if you scroll down a little bit, is I have just destroyed Lucifer. Now, Lucifer is a very good horse. My profitability was negative. That horse won me $500 in the last unraced competition. So I'm down 170 Dirk, but I'm up 100 or 500 USD because of that horse. So these horses, the reason why her PPR is low overall is just because I just kept pushing it just to explore where else this horse is. And I have since now refined the tracks, and I'm planning on getting that back up to profitability. So my point with this would be, is that some of these horses, even if you're going to breed them, put them into those competitions, because I feel like doing the unraced is the smartest place to do your discovery, because you have opportunities to get lucky, win some prizes that are going to offset your discovery costs, and then you'll find out whether or not you want to bench it. But it's just a fantastic place to go out there and get those horses known. So what I would recommend to everybody is breed every instance you have the chance, bench them unraced, and then register them for a competition. You have a higher likelihood of successfully competing during that discovery, and you have the opportunity to potentially win some that you shouldn't have won. Like a 4th place, my old horse got the fastest time on a track, and I won a prize from 4th place despite it being such a bad horse. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities out there.
Lots of opportunities, and being smart about how you study them, how you track them, how many races you do is key. That's how you're going to limit the burn, the dirt burn, and make sure that you're setting yourselves up for what might be ultimately. I mean, we're on, I think Scondert and Burr are on their 7th, 8th, 9th pairing at this point, and we're finally starting to see a couple of horses that are like, yeah, I think that's where it's at. They could still be better. We don't know. We're going to have to breed 8 more times to find out if it gets worse or gets better. But, you know, Vamp and I will be breeding as much as we can.
Oh man. All right, guys. Well, yeah, keep going out there. Don't give up. If you've had some bad luck, it's probably has a lot to do with bad luck. If you have really garbage horses, it's just going to most likely take a lot more hits. The better the horses, assuming it's going to be a lot less. So just keep trying at it, discover smart, and then just move on to the next.
Couldn't have said it better.